when you look at Elon Musk, you look at Jeff Bezos, they don't make income. It's not about income. They get assets, they may borrow against assets. Like I try to minimize the amount of income that I get. I rarely, like on almost every tax return, I'm going to have a negative. So like I wasn't playing the game that way back then, but when you look at the wealthy people, they're not bragging about how much income.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the More Rounds podcast. I'm Kim Lewis, your host, CEO and co-founder of Curlmix. And today, you guys, we have the man with the plan, okay? Mr. Ace Chapman, okay? This man owns more than 30 businesses, has bought and sold over 100 businesses, and has participated in strategic mergers and acquisitions, helping companies go public, which I really want to ask you about, because that is my particular interest. Yes. And spends all his time traveling, and he's never working. No, I'm kidding. He works. Entrepreneurs who are slaves to their desk and watching other entrepreneurs travel, they just assume that you're not working. Yeah. But I know you work. And you reside in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Yep. Okay, so we're going to get into this. Before we do, we have to cheers first.
All right.
We're on more round. Cheers.
Salud.
Oh,
no. I moved my mic.
Do you speak any other languages?
Hablo español.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
any French?
I speak no French. When I was in Thailand, I learned a few things, but yeah, just Spanish. And for the last 3 years, it's been my main language. So every day, I'm speaking Spanish pretty much.
So this is new for you, speaking English today, huh?
No, that like I just landed this morning. So it's like, okay, let me work on my English. You know what I'm saying? I gotta make sure I don't automatically answer you in Spanish.
I would not be able to answer you because your girl, even though I'm half Mexican, I'm part Mexican. The girl don't know Spanish. I'm real blackwashed over here. No, let me not say. We cutting that from the record. No, okay. No, I'm black. Okay, for anybody out there who's like, she's not claiming, I'm black. I'm very black. Okay. Ace. Tell me about your background. Where are you from? How'd you get into the money space, buying and selling businesses? I mean, because you've been doing it since you were 19, and that's not normal. I have bought a business. It wasn't making money though, so I learned a lesson.
Okay. Cool. I didn't know you bought a business. I got to hear a little bit about that at some point.
Yes, for sure. I met you after the fact. I wish I had met you before. Yeah. It's okay.
So, typical entrepreneur story. When I grew up, was the kid that was selling candy in elementary school. We've all heard all those things.
Duffel bag boy.
Yeah. Got to high school and started selling gold necklaces that were not real. But they had the 14 karat on the back. So people knew they weren't real, but I could sell them and they was fronting. So that was fun. I got to, sell to the D-boys and all that stuff. But just hustling, just kind of doing things, starting little businesses. But really, at that point, my passion was political science. And so I went to college, was majoring in political science, was going to school in New York, and became president of the New York College Democrats and worked with Hillary, got to hang out with Hillary Clinton and Bill, and just that was my path, because it was I really wanted to have an impact, and was just really interested in government and politics. And so I'm in college studying political science, but I had this passion for money, and so I was using this stock market simulator called Cool Wall Street. And this is in the early days of the internet, and the business was, the site was always crashing. The people running the business never responded to anything. And so there was a summer coming up, and I had done summer internships with senators and congressmen. I was like, you know what? I want to see if I can intern for this little internet company. So I reached out to them to become an intern. And they basically wrote me back saying, hey, we've moved on to another business. We don't really want this business. If you find somebody else to buy this business, we'll sell it to them, and then you can be an intern for them. I'm like, wait a minute. I know I've been studying political science, but that don't sound like a good deal. I'm going to get your business sold, and then I get a free job out of it. So basically.
What kind of position does the business have to be in to tell you that, though? I mean, that's kind of wild.
And I'm a 19-year-old kid. Like, I'm going to know somebody's going to buy this business.
You didn't even know how to fill out your W-9 form, okay?
Exactly.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So they, basically, I was just curious about the numbers. I was not thinking about buying this business, but I was curious just as a user, I wonder how much money they're making from this thing. So after a few days, I wrote back, it's like, hey, I might know somebody that wants to buy the business. Send me over the numbers. And they send over the P&L and all this. And then I'm like, okay, how much do you want to sell this business for? So the business was making about $60,000. They wanted to sell it for $70,000. And long story short, I couldn't sleep. Like, I was like, man, I want to buy this business. But the downside was I did not have $70,000.
Yeah.
I had about $3,000 that I'd saved up from working and that kind of thing. But it was one of those things where it was like keeping me up at night for like 2 weeks. Like, how can I buy this business? How could I get this thing? I could see the potential. I knew what it could be. And they were just like letting it waste away. And so I, reached out and said, hey, would you finance a part of this? They agreed to finance half of it. So it still got me down to $35,000. I needed 32 more thousand, which might as well have been $1 million for me at that point. It just like, I had nowhere to get 32,000. And I was telling a buddy of mine about it who came from money. He was willing to put in 15,000. And then I ended up getting some credit cards for the rest. Mm-hmm. So that was my first acquisition. But the really important thing was it shifted the way I saw money. Mm-hmm. Because, I was at this university, Colgate University's top 20 school. People were paying $35,000 a year to go there. I fortunately was on scholarship. But you're coming out of there and this is years ago, now it's like 50. So people were coming out of there at like $140,000 in debt, and they were getting jobs that were like $40,000. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was a job. And here I was able to buy this business with $3,000 of my own money that was making $60,000.
Yeah.
And so that was the big shift, was that I can buy income. And it was a little bit frustrating for me because no one had ever told me that. That was what was like shocking and frustrating. I'm like, wait a minute. Nobody has ever told me that I can just buy the income that I want.
Exactly. Ace, I have a question for you. I didn't know you had a political upbringing in your career. And I joke to people that as an entrepreneur, I'm shaking hands and kissing babies as a CEO, and I am fundraising. And my job is much like Barack Obama's. And so but I don't think people ever really realize that, right? And so I would love to know, what are some similarities you saw between like political figures and like successful CEOs? Like, what are some hard skills that they have that, you saw parallels?
So much. I mean, quite honestly, the ability to get people excited about your mission is unreal. I remember going to New Hampshire in the primaries, and, we're volunteering because we believe in a person, and, you're laying on the floor of a gym, and there's just a bunch of us. You're sleeping in the sleeping bag, waking up, working all day.
Wait a minute, what?
Yes.
What campaign was this? Oh my God.
This was Bill Bradley back in the day, so he didn't even win. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. But they're doing this in the hopes of getting a chance to be in office.
Yeah, you're doing it in the hopes of the candidate, the person that you believe in, getting in. And then I remember the opposite. I remember going and meeting Obama in Santa Barbara before he ran. Yeah. And at this point, I'd worked with Bill, worked with Hillary, and so it was a small group of kind of these the heads of each state of the college Democrats. And I go and I meet Obama, and he was just a senator. He wasn't doing anything from Chicago. And so we're in Santa Barbara, and I meet him, and I'm like, that dude is never going to be president. So I wasn't meant to be in I was not able to foresee. I'm like, there is no way this black dude is going to beat Bill and Hillary. So it was this whole thing. And so you had all these people that were volunteering. You're kind of deciding where you're going to put your time and your effort and all these things. But I think that is a huge, huge thing to be able to do and Trump does it just on a whole nother level, where you're able to just motivate and instill your vision in other people and have a connection to them that goes beyond anything that we do on a business side.
Yeah.
You know, if you can motivate people at that level, that becomes a really powerful thing to leverage in business.
What were you doing on these campaigns? Like, what were you doing that you were able to work on all these different?
So a lot of different things in each case. Sometimes it was like, you know, you're running a group of people that are going out in neighborhoods and they're handing out leaflets and, you know, putting them in mailboxes, that kind of thing. I'd worked in congressman offices. And, you know, the really cool thing was I, at that point, was pretty agnostic. Like I was like more focused on the person. So, you know, in Tennessee, I worked with Bill Corker and Bob Corker and his campaign, which was a Republican, where was Zach Wamp, who was a Republican congressman.
So you were like Olivia Pope?
So I had just worked on both sides of those.
And the reason I asked
nowhere nearly as cool. You know, I was still like 1920. Nowhere
Olivia.
Nearly as cool as
Ace
Olivia Pope.
We'll take it. No, and the reason I asked is because most times we gloss over the previous experience that made you qualified to do what you're doing. And I think specifically for political campaigns, you're working with a finite amount of cash that's being monitored, so you can't just spend it like you want to. And I think it's important to mention that it's being monitored because that's essentially a board, right? A board is monitoring your spending and making sure you're not overspending or doing anything fraudulent. And you got to do that with political campaigns as well. Yeah. You also have to organize, develop a marketing team to get this person elected. You have to coach that person up and make sure they're not out here embarrassing all of us. You know what I mean? We're representing their part. And then you have to get people who believe in what you believe in. So in many ways, running a political campaign is also like running a business.
Oh man, and you have to be but so much more diligent in every little action and, you know, stretching every penny. Just like you meant, like, but you've got to really stretch every penny.
If you've seen any of the content we produced or Chromix online and thought, man, I want to invest in that company, now's your chance. Go to chromix.com/invest and you can become an investor today. Now back to the episode. And so then at some point you realize, okay, there's no money in politics. I need to build businesses and buy and sell them.
Yeah. And I just realized I liked it more. You know, I was working, I was able to close that deal. I bought Cool Wall Street and I'm running it from my dorm room and trying to keep up with class. You know, I was the class president. I was running this Democrat thing. You know, it's like all of these other things. I'm like, man, if everything that I'm doing, I'm loving trying to grow this business more than anything else. And so that's when I ended up quitting school, deciding to, you know, go full time in the business.
How'd you decide what was the next kind of business you were going to buy? Because this is a stock simulator is like a tech company, kind of. Yeah. Did you make any money off that, or did it just kind of go to zero? You did make money off of it.
I did make money, but it did go to zero too.
That happens.
So I bought the business in 1999, ran it to 2001. I was able over those couple of years to pull out about 300,000. 2001, the dot-com bubble burst. But I thought it was a failure. And this was one of the things that was a huge transition for me is, you know, I had this mentor who bought and sold hospitals. And I'm telling about the failure of Cool Wall Street. It's like, you know, at this point I'm working, after it blew up, went and got a job at the bank, and I dropped out of college. So I was like glad to have this job, you know, doing mortgages at SunTrust. And he, you know, we're talking, I'm like, yeah, this first deal failed. And, you know, I'm like, when I business died, he was like, okay, so let's look at the numbers. Let's go over it. And he was like, so you pulled out like 300,000 and you put in 3,000. And I was like, yeah. It's like, in what world is that a failure? It's like, you got to start thinking like a deal maker. A deal maker and an entrepreneur are very different things. For an entrepreneur, if you've got a vision like Steve Jobs, no matter what for Steve Jobs, if Apple didn't turn into what it is today, and he made $1 billion, became a billionaire, but Apple went out of business, he would have been a failure because it didn't, you know.
Rework.
Yeah. Rework is another great example. That business failed. He's rich.
He's a billionaire.
He's a billionaire.
Literally.
But the business didn't work. They kicked him out. So, yeah, it was one of those things where that was a huge transition for me. It's like you're seeing yourself as an entrepreneur, but that's not how we think as deal makers. It's about the deal. Did you get an ROI on this deal? And so that shifted everything. And so the next business that I ended up buying was, I was at SunTrust, I'm doing mortgages, and I fortunately God had a different plan. I was kind of happy. I was making good money. You know, I went out, got me a little Mercedes. Like I was getting comfortable in this corporate environment, but I still was a little bit of an entrepreneur. And so I had reached these numbers that you're supposed to be able to have this assistant processor that, you know, would be assigned to you. And so I hit the numbers and I went to the boss. I'm like, hey, you know, I hit these numbers. When do I get my assistant? He's like, you know, I'm at this point a 22-year-old kid. He's like, yeah, you know, we'll get to it, man. Like, you know, I don't want you you're young. Like, can you really manage somebody? It's like, I used to own a business. Like, I can do it. But he just saw me as this young black kid. So I went back to him and said, hey, I'll pay for the assistant. He still is just like not doing it. So I'm looking at the person next to me, who's this old white dude doing lower numbers than me, has his assistant. And I'm like, you know what? I walk out the SunTrust door one day and I see this building next door that had some office space for rent. And I was like, you know what? I could rent one of those spaces and just hire my own assistant.
Okay, not this. You was like, I'll show you what. I'll one up you. How about I buy the building next door and hire my own? And then you have to look at me every day coming in owning the building next door to you. Did you do this?
So I ended up doing this. I kept it a secret though, and I don't recommend anybody follow that part. But these are things that you live and learn. You know, I'm a 22-year-old kid just figuring out business and all this. So I hire an assistant. My numbers go up higher. I hire another guy that, like, at this point, my friends from high school are graduating from high school. I hire a buddy of mine that had graduated college. And, you know, we're killing it. And still didn't really plan on starting my own thing or going out and doing acquisitions. But fortunately, one day I walk in and the boss is like, somehow he had found out about my assistants. He was like, he just said their names. He was like, this person. It was like, listen, we could do a full investigation of whatever's going on or you could just resign. So that day I resigned, but
you were doing the numbers just because you had too much power for him.
Realized, I could buy a mortgage company. And so that was the beginning of, like, it wasn't like, I want to go and buy this next deal. It was like, okay, I'm in this situation. And that was the first time it really clicked for me. And it wasn't even like I'm going to go buy a mortgage company, because at this point, there just weren't these people that were talking about buying and selling businesses. This is 2000, like there wasn't a Instagram, YouTube, like none of that stuff was around.
Yeah.
So I just didn't think that I could buy this other business until I was kind of forced to look and see, are there mortgage businesses for sale? I started reaching out to business brokers and just learned about this whole world, because the first deal I just looked into. And so it wasn't until that point that I realized, buying and selling businesses could be a thing.
So what does it mean to buy a mortgage company? Are you buying like a bank?
Buying a mortgage broker.
Okay.
So we had relationships with a bunch of banks. So the funny thing is, I still was doing deals with SunTrust.
Okay.
But making more money because I wasn't an employee in the bank. I was basically outside of the bank. So we had, close to 80 different banks that we would work with, and SunTrust was one of them. And so now SunTrust had to compete with other banks every time we had a deal to bring.
Okay. Help me understand though. You're buying the mortgage company. What does that mean?
So they had about 30 agents.
Okay.
It's almost think like a real estate agency. So these brokers that were under this company were going out, building relationships and selling mortgages. And I would pay them a percentage, and then I would do the deals with the banks to get a percentage of those mortgages.
Owning the mortgage company is like owning the rights to be able to do the deal with the agents and the other banks. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we had relationships with a bunch of the realtors and title companies and all that.
So you're doing this, you're doing the mortgages. Did you end up buying a mortgage company?
I did.
You bought the place where the dude was working?
No, so this was a separate company.
Okay, gotcha. Because he was at SunTrust. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. How long after that do you start branching out of real estate?
Almost immediately.
Okay.
Like there was cash flow coming in. I did some businesses in real estate. So I bought a Homevestor franchise, and everything was just these little lessons.
What's a Homevestor franchise?
Homevestor franchise is a real estate investment company.
Okay.
So now this was like
because you're selling the mortgages and then people who want to invest.
Exactly.
And you double dipping. Okay.
Exactly. So now we can do the mortgage on this house that we've rehabbed and all that. And then just that whole deal making thing started to come to life, where I realized, oh, if I go to this construction company that is doing the rehab for the deals that we're doing through Homevestors, and I tell them, hey, we can send you more deals, but I need a little bit of equity in this. Now I've got a little piece of a construction company. I go to the title company, say, hey, we've got a bunch of relationships. We got our deals. We can send you all of this, but I need a little bit of equity. And so now you start to build out this holding company where you're getting paid for all the business that you're doing. So, it just started to create this thing where you've got supply, you've got your customers, you've got all of these relationships, and you can start to get little pieces of everybody that you do business with.
Do you still own that holding company?
I sold that years ago.
Why did you sell it?
I got very, very lucky. This was 2007. I had a guy. Before
the 08 crash. Oh my gosh.
I just got lucky. I had a guy, he was from Georgia, and he wanted to come into Tennessee and start doing deals and all this. And he came to me and wanted to buy it. And I literally told him, no, like, dude, things are good. Like, why would I sell this? And I vividly remember I was in Nashville celebrating a friend of mine's birthday. And it's late at night. I've been negotiating with this guy back and forth because I basically told him, hey, this isn't for sale.
Yeah.
But this is my price. And if you want to buy it, you can buy it at this price. I'm not going to do nothing else. There's nothing to negotiate. So he calls me and I'm figuring it's late at night, like 11. So it's late at night. I'm figuring he's calling me to say, hey, you got a deal. I want to buy it. So I walk out, and I'm also a little bit tipsy, just expecting him to say yes. So I'm outside in Nashville. We're on the phone. He's like, listen, man, all I'm asking is for you to come down on the price, $10,000, just so I feel like I'm not giving you the asking price. Like, I just come down a little bit. And I'm like, dude, I told you not to call me back if you're not going to pay my price. And again, at this point, I'm like 25 or so, but I got so lucky. He came back, bought it. He was happy. And he was just a lot wealthier than I have. If I had held it to 2008, I would have had to file bankruptcy. It would have been a nightmare.
What did you sell it for, the holding company?
The whole holding company ended up in about $800,000.
Wow. And you were 25.
So that was 25.
Did you have to pay anybody back? Or you just
yeah. So this is one of the things that I will tell people looking at this camera. Like, taxes are the most important thing to plan for, prepare for, and minimize. Like, this is what the wealthy realize that I did not understand at that point. And so, half of that goes away immediately because I didn't understand how to do things correctly. Even just the fact that I should have it would have been in my best interest to finance some of that over a longer period of time. But I'm like, no, I want all cash. So I wasn't smart enough even to structure. And so that became this whole other thing of realizing, I don't want income. I don't want to, I want things that are going to be assets. And it's really the difference between, I feel like in business right now, there are three games that are being played. There's the status game, there's the money game, there's the wealth game. And there's a bunch of people playing the status game. Then there are a little bit fewer that are playing the money game. The money game is like, oh, let me get, when you hear the 6 figures, 7 figures, I got income. Everybody's really focused on income. But there are very, very few that are playing the wealth game. And the wealth game is assets that you're not really trying to maximize income. Like, when you look at Elon Musk, you look at Jeff Bezos, they don't make income. It's not about income. They get assets, they may borrow against assets. Like, I try to minimize the amount of income that I get. I rarely, like on almost every tax return, I'm gonna have a negative. So like I wasn't playing the game that way back then, but when you look at the wealthy people, they're not bragging about how much income. It's literally funny because you have the different levels of conversation where it's like, it's literally dumb to be excited about income. The IRS is excited about your income.
Taxes, yes.
The IRS is excited about your income. You want to be excited about wealth, and wealth is assets that you're able to leverage. And a lot of times you're not even leveraging them for income. You're leveraging them to borrow against them and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was like again, learned very expensive lesson, probably $400,000 lesson that I was able to learn. And so now that becomes like, even if you think about a percentage basis, if you like, people are will work more to earn 10%, 20% more this year in income when they have a 40% expense in taxes that they're not minimizing.
The number one question I get is, Kim, will you coach me? Will you mentor me? Will you advise me on raising funding? And it's really hard to do one-on-one things, but I am going to launch a community to help you guys fund your business. And the way you get access to that community is by clicking the link in the show notes, kimlewisceo.com, and join the mailing list. You'll be first to know when I'm dropping a community so we can help you fund your business. All right, now back to the episode. So then I have a question for folks who are focusing on the asset game or the wealth game, right? Does that mean I'm borrowing against my assets to get liquid cash to then spend, but it's considered debt? And then once I'm racking up maybe $100,000, a couple $100,000 in these debts, I'll sell something to get money to pay off that debt. But I'm never actually paying myself $400,000 in cash or gotcha. Okay.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
That's it.
It's really not even that complicated. Like, that's what's really interesting. You know, if you have a stock portfolio, you have any of these things, like, it's in your best interest to borrow against those. And it is the whole reason, you know, when Warren Buffett says his secretary pays more in taxes than he does, and he's multi-billionaire, it's that kind of thing that they're structuring.
So, okay. Walk me through this example. And I'm asking advice because you're the money guy. Okay. If I'm an entrepreneur, I'm paying myself a couple $100,000 a year, right? I'm paying, and my taxes are 30%, 40% on that $200,000. You know what I mean? I'm paying Uncle Sam a salary, right? How am I minimizing that? I mean, you have to have assets to borrow against. And, you know, I guess you can take debt out on your business if you have one, but like, that's the business's money. Like, that's not money I could just cut myself, because then I'm still paying tax. You know what I'm saying? So like, how would you advise? I'm getting a little game.
I know. So the important thing is, I wouldn't give any particular person advice. I'll give kind of just general thoughts. Yeah. So I'm not an accountant. I wouldn't tell somebody what to do. But the way that I would think about it, literally, I'll just tell you what I do. You know, one of the reasons, you know, when you talk about the 30 businesses, it sounds like, oh man, that's outrageous. That's a lot of businesses. So, you know, there are too many.
Well, you're not operating these businesses. 1,000
different kind of ways, tactics, I guess you could say, that boil down to the strategy. But, you know, one of my tactics is just to buy another business. So because I can get an immediate write down of certain types of businesses.
Okay.
So it becomes this really cool thing where if I've got $200,000, I would go buy a business that may be that I can borrow more money on, that may be making $200,000. So I'm gonna put a down payment on that business. Now, I'm buying the business for like $800,000. There's probably at least $400,000, but in a lot of the deals I do, and this is all just me, you have to talk to your accountant to see if they think you can do what this is. But I bought deals where it's 100% write off that year. Right? So I just paid $200,000 for a business that I'm getting $800,000 write off on. So I can then use that in future years. But the other real key there is that business, if you're buying it at a 3 multiple, is making $300,000. So after you pay the interest and all that.
And that business is getting taxed on their profit, but you're not getting taxed on the...
Well, it's going to be the next year, right? So this year, you're not paying any taxes because you're writing that business down. So you're not paying no taxes that year. You got a full 800. You only needed to write off 200,000. Now the next year, you're making, let's say 400,000. Because you got the 2 businesses, right?
Yeah.
So now you can go buy another one, but you still have about 600,000 left from the 800 of the previous year of that business to write down that 400. So the third year, it's time to do another deal.
Yeah.
And so as you start to see that snowball, it's almost like I have to keep buying businesses. It's almost like the IRS is paying me to buy businesses, whereas most people, instead of using that to buy assets, they're paying taxes.
And of course the incentive makes sense because they want you to be transacting. That's how they get their money. That's how they keep the economy going. Because if you're putting money in other people's pockets and then they're getting the money and starting new businesses, creating jobs.
That's part of it. And the other part is that businesses are rewarded by the government simply because they can afford to pay lobbies. So you can think about it altruistically, or you can just think about the real reality, which is, poor people can't pay lobbyists to get their taxes, their tax benefits.
Dang.
Businesses, real estate, they're paying the lobbyists to go to those congressmen and say, hey,
So, Ace, man, okay. I probably paid $60,000 in taxes last year, and I could have bought a business.
Should have bought a business.
I should have bought a business, and they're gonna be. And then they always send me a tax bill. So my tax bill that I just got, oh my God, it was like they're like, yeah, you're gonna owe like at least $15,000. I was like, what? I'm doing too much good in the world to be having to send the government like a $20,000 check. And I was like, oh, I could have just bought a business, like. Exactly. And I'm so focused on trying to build Chromix for a big outcome one day. I'm just ignoring all the short term stuff, But I don't have to. That's a good advice. Okay, if I want to buy a business, how do I know? I feel busy. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm running Chromix. We got 4C only, crowdfunding. I'm doing all the things. I don't even know where to start. You know what I mean? And I know you have a course where I can like take it and like learn how to figure out what business I want to buy. But like, what would you recommend? Like for someone who's busy like me to.
The really important thing is understanding that you can buy the business that you want, So I think one of the things that people confuse, and it's one of the reasons that I think it's tough for a lot of entrepreneurs to acquire a business, because they know everything they had to do to build their business from scratch.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at exactly what you just said. I'm doing all of the things. And that's what every entrepreneur is doing. They're doing all of the things, and they had to do it from the very beginning. They had to figure out their HR policy and hiring and getting talent and finding that talent. They had to figure out their marketing from scratch and testing things and what they're going to do. They had to figure out the product, getting it perfect, making sure people are happy, customer service, delivery, logistics. It's literally endless.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of entrepreneurs, it becomes this overwhelming concept, like, what? I'm going to get into another business? But this is a different game. It's really the asset game. And so the really great thing is on the opposite end of that, when I have an entrepreneur that buys the kind of businesses that we buy, they appreciate it so much more than somebody who hasn't been in business. They're like, wait a minute, I didn't have to figure out this, I get to just come up with the strategies and the path of growth, and really just kind of play around with what's already there. It's essentially the difference between building a car from scratch and buying a car. Yeah. Now you just get to drive the car if you just bought the right car. So when I'm buying a business, I'm only buying the business that is missing pieces that I want to work on. So I'm not buying something where I've got to work in the business. Right. They've got their manager, they got their operator, everything is already in place.
Yeah. So, every time I talk to you, Ace, I feel like I should be doing something different. Like, I feel like I should be making different choices in my life. And I should be looking at, so when you say that, my mind goes to a local beauty supply or a local like car wash or a local laundromat. Are these things that you're saying that are like, these are going to be assets, but do I need to get a new one each year?
So here's the thing for you in your situation, because you could also just buy things. Like everything it's almost like this chain link. Yeah. Where every deal I'm doing is hooked to the next deal. So in your situation, I would be looking at what am I spending money on? We just did a deal on a marketing agency where we had one business that is an animation studio, and we're sending out we're doing business for a lot of these marketing agencies, and we realized, man, okay, we've got these clients over here that come to us for animation. We should do a deal with an agency so that we can give that upsell to those clients. And so you're looking at what are we already spending money on? And then obviously we were also using a marketing agency. So you can look, like one of the strategies that I tell people is literally just looking at your expenses. If you're already in a business, I'm going to look at my expenses. If I buy a business today, the first thing I'm looking at is their expense. The most simple thing. One of the deals we did in a fund a couple years ago, it turned out to be, now we just do a bunch of this, was a bookkeeping company. Because this company just had a bunch of different little deals. They were spending a bunch of money on bookkeeping. It's like, man, wait a minute, we spend $2,500. We buy a little bookkeeping company, like that makes a big dent. So we got a little small bookkeeping company, basically doubled that just with our business. And then we had all these other businesses. So now we're saying, hey, take all, you can do the bookkeeping for all these. It wipes across that. You're basically buying a business. And in that case, the day we bought it, we tripled the value. So because we were able to bring all of that business to it. So you're like, one strategy is just looking at expenses and doing deals based on your expenses, because every dollar this is in general, every dollar that's going out is a dollar that could be going to a company that you own.
Yeah. Ace, this is so good. Oh my gosh. Okay. Lightning round, book that every entrepreneur should read.
First of all, the ACE formula.
Oh, there you go.
You should definitely get the ACE formula. Man, but there's so many. If you're interested in buying and selling businesses, I really love Steve Schwartzman's book, which is a biography just about Steve Schwartzman. He started Blackstone. It's really, really cool.
Blackstone owns everything, guys.
They own everything. They own everything. And that is the reason they own everything is exactly what I was talking about, where you end up with this snowball effect of needing to, if you're doing things the right way, you're just that is that wealth point.
Yeah.
You're just always doing deals because you need to be doing deals.
Wow. Last question. Most money you ever lost on a deal?
On a single deal, we had a business that was in the affiliate space, and we had bought the business. We felt like there was this huge opportunity to grow it. We had an operator that was running the business, and at first was doing a really, really great job. But it was in a fund, and so, we weren't in the day-to-day. And he just made a couple of very horrible decisions. So $1.8 million deal. It got so bad that essentially what we realized was better was to give the deal back to the seller instead of paying the seller finance. So the actual, I was going to say it would have been physically, it felt like a $1.8 million loss, but the truth is we had put down about $500,000 before, and then we're making these payments, and that's one of the things that I do love about these deals is in that case we could make a $1.8 million bet without having to pay that whole thing. But yeah, so that was a very painful one.
Ooh, okay. But I had never heard of that. If you buy a business and you don't like it, you can say, hey, can you go back, take your business back, and I'll...
You can take this back.
This seller finance again.
You can go on there. This is back, dog.
That's good to know. I didn't know that was true. Oh, wow.
Which is great, too, because, again, when you're playing that other game on the tax side, what would you rather do? Would you rather take a bet on a business and get the tax write-off, or just send the money to the government and not make the bet?
Gotcha. Wow. Ace, can you tell people where they can find you?
Absolutely. AceChapman.com. Ace@AceChapman.com is my email. Feel free to hit me up. And Instagram is ace.chapman.
Oh my gosh. Well, you guys, you heard it here first on the More Rounds podcast. Thank you so much, Ace, for coming on. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Oh, and do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.